You may have seen my previous video comparing the King Kong 5040 prop to the venerable Gemfan 5045 bullnose, and long story short, I did not like the bullnose at all. So I'm trying a couple other types of props to see if I like them any better. And part of what's motivating me here is that I bought the RCX 2206 2250 kV motors on a friend's recommendation that they were bulletproof and reliable and largely bomb-proof, crash-proof motors. And so far, they have proven to be so. I have friends flying the RCX 2205 motors, either the 2350 kV or the 2633 kV, and they are pretty regularly replacing bells on those motors. Um, and I have had zero mechanical issues with my motors despite crashing them many times. I've broken two arms on my copter, but the motor that was attached, not a complaint at all. So they are definitely reliable and robust motors, but they're also a little bit heavy, and I have a feeling that they're not as efficient as the smaller motors, at least the way I'm using them. I have a theory that these motors want to be more loaded down, that they would do better if they were not running on a little 5040 prop. In fact, I think they may be ideal for 6 inches. But since I don't have a battery that is capable of feeding these motors 100 to 120 amps peak, I'm not ready to run them on 6 inches. So I'm trying out these tri-blade props on the idea that they may load down these motors a little more, get them into a happier part of their torque RPM curve, and maybe give me a little better performance and maybe even a little better efficiency. I mean, this is, but on paper, a less efficient prop than the 5040. But if it puts the motor in a better part of its torque slash RPM curve, then maybe it'll actually give me better flight times. Let's find out. One thing I think you're going to see right off the bat is that these props, I'm definitely going faster on these props. It may not be as obvious to you guys unless you just spend a lot of time watching my videos, but it's definitely faster. You're also going to see some shutters. I did not retune my PIDs at all going into this. If I had gotten anything really dramatically bad, then I would have retuned them, but it wasn't too bad. Part of that's thanks to Betaflight. Yay, Betaflight! That can just make the best of just about anything. But I did not really have any bad tendencies, so it didn't change the PIDs. I think the P gains were a little high because I was getting some shutters in times when I normally wouldn't. So that was kind of indicative that they're making more thrust. The copter is definitely faster. Nothing else about my setup changed except that I changed these props. I'm going to freeze right here. I went into a slow hover here because a friend of mine was about to turn on his video transmitter and I didn't want to crash if he glitched me somehow. And I want you to notice that I am at a slow forward cruise at 1250 on the throttle. My normal hover point with the 5040s is around 1400. So these guys are definitely making more thrust. There's like a lot more thrust. From 1400 down to 1250, that's a pretty big deal. A little slalom through these trees and then a fast pass here. Notice I'm at like 1400 throttle and I am cooking. I mean, I'm not like, you know, cooking like world-class cooking, but I was moving there. My punches and climbs over trees are more authoritative. And the other thing I want to point out is that these props were definitely floatier than the 5040s and even the 5045 bullnoses. So dropping the throttle at the end of an acrobatic move, the copter had a lot more tendency to sort of float down instead of dropping faster. So here I am at 1275, 1269, 1250. I'm making a lot more thrust. And that's the end. I've got another clip I want to show you. Unfortunately, it's DVR only. I didn't record it on the high def because I had crashed and my Xiaomi Yi had fallen off. I want to show you this one because I'm doing the same kind of slalom flying through the trees that I was trying to do on the Gemfan 5045 bullnoses and just was completely unable to. And I would like to just show you how much more sort of locked in and controllable and I don't know, how just much better these props are doing. Nothing's changed except my piloting, which, it's not amazing, but I am getting the job done. Yeah, much better, much better. Another thing I want to point out to you is where the throttle is at during the sharper part of these turns, like right there. On the King Kong 5040 props, the throttle is hitting about 1600, and now the throttle is barely going above maybe 1450 or 1500. It's most often around 1300. Also, there is a lot less sort of rowing the throttle up and down like with the 5040s. With the 5040s, I would kind of throw myself into the turn, and then jam the throttle to get going the other direction. It may just be that the throttle is moving less because I'm making more thrust, right? So I don't have to move it as much. But it feels like the throttle is a little steadier here. That being said, I'm not actually sure that these props are handling better. It's definitely controllable, maybe just taking some getting used to. I'm not sure that they're actually feeling like they're tracking quite as well. It might just be that I need to get used to them, though. Nope, there we go. End of that flight. So what's the final word on these props? I like them. I did not like the Gemfan 5045 bullnose at all. Maybe I would like them on a lighter copter. My copter is 680 grams, so it's relatively heavy for a racing quad. And it's possible on a lighter copter, the slower response of the Gemfans would make less of a difference because they would need to make less thrust in order to affect the copter. Enough said about the Gemfans. I like these props. DAL 5045 bullnose tri-blade. Got them from surveillzone.com. They are, by all rights, less efficient props than the 5040s, just by the shape. Look at the tip shape. It's so square. But interestingly, I got the same or better flight time. I get about 2.5 minutes on the 5040s, a little less, 2:15 if I'm really pushing it, and I was consistently getting about 2:30 to 2:45 on these. So I'm definitely making more thrust. I'm definitely pulling more amps is the other thing. Definitely the peak amps were way higher. I was peaking at 90 amps, no problem. Whereas I have a hard time getting above about 65 amps with the 5040 props. So I'm not sure how I could be pulling more amps and getting the same flight times. It must, and my batteries are based on milliamp hours, so I pull 1100 milliamp hours based on the same current sensor, so nothing's changed there. It must be that the peak is higher on these, but in normal flight, I'm easier on the throttle, and so I'm using less. That's just the only explanation. I'll take it. They do feel good. However, I'm not sure that I'm going to make these my day-to-day prop, and there's two reasons why. The first reason is that you really need I feel like you really want 100 or 120 amp battery C rating to feed these motors with these props. They're not going to be pulling 100 amps all the time, but they will pull 100 amps some of the time, and the rest of the time they need to be fed and they need to be able to take a little bit of sag. So I would want a bigger battery or at least a higher C rating battery, and I just don't have that. The other thing is that these props, they're called indestructible props, and it's true they don't break, but they bend. They bend, and once they've bent, it can be really hard to notice that they've bent, and then you go to fly, and all of a sudden you got all this vibration. And then you have to land, and you have to very carefully look at the props to see which one is slightly bent, and then you gotta swap it out. So I went through probably 6 props in a session of flying, which is more than I usually go through. These may be quote unquote indestructible, but I actually found them to be less durable than the King Kong 5040 props, because the King Kong 5040s, the two-blade props, are just not as sensitive to balance. These three-blade props are very sensitive to balance, and if they're just a little bit out, it's terrible. Whereas the two-blade props can be in really pretty abysmal shape, and you'll still have a totally flyable prop. I mean, these were flyable too, but it was vibrating really bad. I mean, if you had to finish a race on it, you could do it, but if you're shooting video, it's no good. So I think I like these props a lot. I'm not sure that they're going to be as economical as their indestructible name suggests, because they get knocked out of balance so easy, but they give really good performance if you've got a battery that can feed them. I would definitely compare them to 6-inch thrust on 5-inch with 5-inch handling. They're definitely in that realm. A 6-inch prop is probably going to make more thrust by a little bit of a margin, and it's definitely going to do it more efficiently. But if you've got a 5-inch frame and or you don't like 6-inch handling, these props would be a good one to look at. That being said, you do definitely also need a 6-inch battery. In other words, a battery that could feed, big props, because these are not these props will suck down the juice. Anyway, that's my review of these props. Hope you liked it. Happy flying.